first meeting of the new year. We start off with the financial report from our treasurer.
Thank you, Barney. And it's the start of the new calendar year, but halfway through the fiscal year. So the report that's in the packet covers the first half of the fiscal year. On the revenue side, we've received almost exactly 50% of our roughly $5 million budgeted revenue for the year. On the expense side, operating, we spent about 47% of our budgeted operating expenditures, which are budgeted about $4 million. And then on the capital side, we spent approximately $600,000 of about $850,000 that's budgeted for the year of capital expenditures. Those items include asphalt and concrete work, park improvements to the town office, and some IT expenditures. So the meeting packet has both summary and detailed reports with a lot more information for those who are interested in exploring it further. And if there are any questions, I'd be pleased to address them. Any questions?
Any questions from my colleagues? Okay.
Report.
No, everything seems very much on track, so it's good. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Todd, please, your report. Todd, by the way, feels under the weather this evening and is going to make it as best he can through our discussions, but may have to dive out from time to time.
Thanks, right. Thanks, Barney. So I'll just review some of the staff initiatives over the past month. A main initiative staff undertook was the development and advertisement of a request for proposals for a speed camera system. We reviewed proposals and identified a preferred vendor, and that will be discussed more this evening, as will most of the items in my manager's report. We met with Corso officials to discuss the town's temporary garage facility and the status of their financing, which is still expected to be obtained in March of this year. Staff attended, Dave in particular, attended the Public Services Committee meeting to discuss Rosemary Street traffic and safety issues, again, which will be discussed later this evening as an update. Staff also reviewed WSSC plans for Zimmerman Park water main replacement and relocation project, again, to be discussed later. And staff also met with compost crew to discuss service and billing issues for their organic waste collection contract. We communicated with Purple Line Transit Partners regarding Capitol Crescent Trail lighting, and also with the State Highway Administration today regarding the Bradley Lane safety study. An update will be provided on that conversation later this evening. Staff also reviewed and discussed potential workforce housing development on Connecticut Avenue, as well as reviewed in coordination with Ron, our attorney, the Governor Moore's 2026 housing legislation. One bill has been pre-filed or was pre-filed in October. The other two have yet to be filed, but that again will be discussed later this evening. The staff arranged a tour of the single stream recycling processing facility for Climate and Environment Committee members. We met with the same committee members to discuss native plantings in the town's right-of-way and responded to the committee's request for website updates. Staff also continued the FY27 budget preparation process and provided support to town committees. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from my colleagues? I want to say that I was able to join the tour of the single stream recycling facility with the Climate and Environment Committee and found it very, very interesting. I felt like I was entering into an Escher print, with all of the conveyor belts going up and down. You didn't know what position you were on. But overall, I certainly came away impressed with the seriousness of the management wanting to make sure that to the best of their ability they can recycle. Also very impressed with the personnel. It's largely actually a manual operation for people to reach in and grab stuff and separate it out. It's just stunning. But overall, I think, when we were here, I think that we were told that approximately 80% or so of what goes in is ultimately sent out to be reused. That's not all pure. So then even when it arrives at the destination where it's going to be used, there's still some percentage of waste in there. But by and large, they are able to recycle the vast bulk of it, and generally very comfortable with single stream recycling. But anyway, the Climate Environment Committee is going to be considering that. We may hear more about ideas that they have in the future, but I just wanted to say that I enjoyed the tour. Appreciate the fact that it was organized. Okay. With that, then, if there are any public comments at this time, is there anybody who would wish to speak about any matter that's in the mind? There's not dealing with the public hearings. The public hearings will be separate, but on any other topic. That's part of the public hearing, and you'll have your opportunity to speak then. But this is for anything else in general that anybody in the town would wish to raise at this time. And I no longer can see the.
There's no one.
Anybody's hand is raised on the screen.
No one online, but there are no hands raised on Zoom.
I'm sorry?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. All right, but we obviously are having trouble with our audio tonight, so just bear with us. We're doing the best we can. All right, with that, then let's turn to the second topic. But before we do, I want to make a few other changes, suggested changes in the agenda for tonight. We'll be having two public hearings, first on the speed bumps and then also on installation of a crosswalk in West. We then have several items for council discussion, but I'd like one on the speed camera, which is a very important one for us tonight, then also on the work that WSCC is going to be doing in Zimmerman. But I'd like to add two others. One, I'd like to discuss Governor Moore's housing program, which I was able to alert my colleagues to, and Todd, you briefly referred to. Early stages, but I think we want to make sure we have some ventilation of the key issues that are coming out there. And also, I'd like us to have a bit of discussion about in regard to snow removal from one of the residents who wrote in this week, and the council all saw the exchange, as to whether there's anything else in particular we can think of doing to try to induce greater compliance by homeowners to the obligation to clean their own sidewalks when the town doesn't do it. That's a chronic issue which we've had for years, and want to have some discussion of that. Then when we get to other business, I'd like to add as an update the discussion that Todd and Rich and I, along with Grant, who's here in the audience, and Ed Crawley had with the State Highway Administration regarding Bradley Lane just this afternoon. So we have an update on that. I hope those are acceptable changes to the agenda. Okay, thank you. All right. With that, let's proceed to the first public hearing regarding speed bumps. Ron, can I turn it over to you, please, to conduct us through the stages of this, what we need to be focused on?
Yes, sure. So we'll start with a presentation of a staff report, and following that, have questions from the council. And then after that, if there's anyone in the audience who'd like to make a comment, they can please raise their hand. And once identified by the mayor, please come to the front to the podium and identify yourself by name and address. And Mr. Mayor, are we imposing a 3-minute limit or some other limit?
I think we're probably okay without having to have.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, with that, I'll ask the manager to present the issue.
Sure. At the November council meeting, the council discussed a speed hump request from a number of residents on East Avenue. And in November, the town had received that qualifying petition from those residents. The town followed its speed hump policy. We had the engineer review the block. He found that the length and alignment and slope of the segment would support the installation of 2 humps, which are shown on the map in the packet. And he, if approved, he recommended they be placed in the locations on that map, as well as advisory speed hump signs in conjunction with the speed humps. We conducted a feasibility. After the feasibility study, we commissioned a week-long traffic study to measure traffic speeds and volumes. There are certain criteria that must be met. The speed study did not find that traffic in the block meets the required speed and volume thresholds. However, following a review of the record in December, the council decided to proceed with further consideration of the request and to schedule a public hearing. If the street segment does not meet the requirements that are cited in the town's policy, the council may still approve the installation of a speed hump or speed humps if they find significant mitigating factors in support of the request. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues about this? All right. Let me give the opportunity to residents to speak. Who would like to speak on this particular topic? Please. No, please go to the podium and announce yourself and your address.
But Grossman, we live at 6707 East Avenue. My husband Larry Samuelson is here by Zoom. We've been in the town for about 41 years. Speed on East Avenue has gotten really bad, and it's this is anecdotal. I don't have the data, but to us it looks like it's getting worse and worse, and it's scary. And about 5 years ago, our car was hit by a speeding car coming down Bradley, which did not stop. We were left with an enormous bill. And we see kids sometimes in the street, we see speeding traffic, it just scares us. So we strongly support the bumps. We think it would help mitigate the problem. We do have a little bit of a question about the location that's been proposed. It looks to us as though it's fairly into the block. And if cars are used to coming into the block and speeding, I'm not sure that a speed bump that far into the block will slow traffic down fast enough. So I don't know, I'm not a traffic expert, but I just wondered whether it would make more sense for it closer to Bradley. That's all I've got.
Dave, do you want to respond to that question?
Sure. Yeah, I guess the location that's proposed was recommended by Joe Contreras. There is a requirement that a speed hump be not closer than 150 feet to a stop sign. And generally they try to be sort of centered mid-block, which is typically where speeds are the highest. Especially on a two-way street, I just got traffic speeding probably in both directions. Sort of maybe some kind of split distance between the stop sign and the next one.
Okay, thank you. Grant?
Grant Davies, 4313 Bradley Lane, and I'm on the corner of East, and I'm speaking in support of the speed humps. I guess there's three factors that I would put in place. I looked at the data, and roughly 50% of the traffic is over 20 miles an hour. And the likelihood is, and I really tossed out this information by hour, I would say given the fact that people can turn onto East at either from west or east, that in the afternoon the volume of traffic is higher, so I would think that it's highly likely that, and I know that from personal experience walking there, it's highly likely that the highest volume of traffic going through there is when the restrictions are on in the rest of town, and that happens to be when most of the kids are around on the streets. The second factor, and I don't know if Lee's on here or not, but I know that Lee's sign with the child sign has gotten knocked over a couple of times by cars going down there. So that is an indication. The last thing I'd say is the council, the Public Safety Committee, back when we did the original traffic support, there were recommendations related to East to close the access to East in the afternoons, to restrict that. It was in that study that the town engineers did. Those were not followed through on, and we decided to go in some other course. So the fact that the volume has increased is there. It's still 1,500 cars a day. That's a significant volume that you're seeing on the street. So I think for those three reasons, even though it might not quite have reached 25 miles an hour, I think the council really needs to consider that when we put all those together. I'm very supportive.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments? No. I don't see any hands raised either on the screen or in person. Oh, sure.
Yeah, just for the completeness of the record, we did get an email from Martha Johnson, who lives at 6807, supporting the request.
Right, good.
I assume that was forwarded.
Yes,
to
it
you.
was. We saw that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, that ends the public hearing. Are there any comments or discussion among the council? No? Okay. Could I see a motion, please?
I move we approve the speed hump, the 2 speed humps on West Avenue as per the engineer's
On east,
recommendation.
east.
I mean, east, I'm sorry, on east.
Okay, second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, done. Good. As a practical matter, and I think people understand this, we can't put them in until the weather warms up, but we will be looking to have that done as soon as the weather is warm enough, which I guess will be probably April. Could be March. No. Okay, good. All right. Okay, the second public hearing has to do with putting in a crosswalk at the edge of Ridge, end of Ridge crossing west. Dave, do you want to give a quick summary of that?
I guess the prospect of putting a crosswalk across West Avenue, was discussed by the Public Services Committee, following the recent installation of the sidewalk along the north side of the street. The Public Services Committee was asked by the council to look at sort of the traffic and volumes and complaints that we've gotten on West Avenue. And so the recommendation of the committee was to cross it off, and see if that, improves the public safety conditions, before any other further changes are reviewed. So it probably doesn't require a public hearing, but we want to make sure that there was a chance to that the interest of the public in the crosswalk. So the council decided that the December meeting is scheduled for public hearing.
Right, good. Okay, thank you. Any questions from the colleagues? Is there any public comments on this public hearing? Okay, I don't see anybody on the screen or in the room. The one comment that I'll make about it is that especially because of the kids, many kids who walk to the one to school that's right there, having a very carefully delineated place for them to walk and cross is important. And now that we have the sidewalk on the north side of Ridge all the way to West, this provides further guidance on the appropriate and safe way for people to both use the sidewalk and then cross over. So all to the good. Any other discussion, comments from anybody? Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move approval
Okay.
for the pedestrian crosswalk on West Avenue.
Second?
Second.
Gwen? Gwen's hand went up first.
Good.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'd like to move on to discussion items. And the first one that we want to take up is a speed camera. In our previous meeting, we have approved placing a speed camera on Bradley, and we asked the town staff to review the various options of who could be the most appropriate vendor or contractor to actually handle this. Much to Todd's surprise, it turned out there were 6 different responses to the bids, more than you would anticipated, but that's good. It allows you to do a careful comparison, some serious work in reviewing it. And tonight, we would like to hear the staff review results of that review, be able to ask questions, and then I hope be able to vote and give guidance to the town staff and to Todd to proceed in negotiation with the chosen vendor so that we can get this going. So with that, Todd, let me turn it over to you.
Thanks, Barney. To follow up on what Barney his brief overview, yes, once the council in November approved the speed camera program and deployment of a camera on Bradley Lane, and the staff for the past few months has been looking at contracts that were already in place with other municipalities that had already undertaken a competitive procurement procedure. Elevate, for example, Chevy Chase Village contracts with Elevate to run their speed camera program. However, we learned that Elevate had to modify some terms of the Chevy Chase Village contract due to pricing issues and economies of scale for the town. The county now contracts with Vitronic. However, they didn't. We weren't certain that the terms they were offering were the most favorable to the town. Specifically, there's no cost neutrality clause, which I'll discuss in a few minutes. And so we decided to issue an RFP in mid-December with proposals due January 6th. And we did, to our surprise, receive 6 proposals from speed camera vendors for just one camera initially to be deployed on Bradley Lane. After evaluating the proposals, Elevate emerged as the top recommendation. It already operates the speed camera program for Chevy Chase Village and actually operated for many years the county program until, in fact, the end of last year in December. It also has 16 active Maryland programs. So in other words, it has established presence for customer service, repairs, maintenance, etc. Elevate also offers the most favorable financial terms for the town, including as estimated violation rates decline with improved driver behavior. And I can go through that in a few minutes as well. Elevate provides an explicit contractual cost neutrality guarantee. It features simpler pricing and administration, and it offers a faster path to implementation given the existing contract that we can use to model our contract from Chevy Chase Villages. If you look at the matrix that's in your council packet, I can walk you through some of the variables that were considered, starting with pricing. However, before I do that, I should note something about technology. All the vendors have different sort of technologies involved in their cameras, with laser, AI, even recently, LiDAR, radar. But all the technology is capable of doing what we need it to do. We're only monitoring one lane of traffic in one direction. Some have more innovative and newer technologies like AI, as I mentioned. But all the technology, and some of that technology can monitor multiple lanes of traffic in multiple directions, as well as monitor what type of vehicle it is, how tall it is, and all the variables that we don't really need in a program that simply has one camera on Bradley Lane. So all the technology is capable. So that's sort of a level playing field because we know everything that each vendor offers is capable of doing what we want it to do. As you'll see in the matrix, there are different pricing structures. There's either a flat or fixed fee, and that's all that we pay on a monthly basis. There are proposals that include a fixed fee with a cost per processed citation. Some have thresholds, meaning we pay per citation over 250 or 500 volume. And there is two effectively that have no fixed fee, but we only pay a cost per process citation. I say that Genoptic is the vendor that offers 3 pricing options in their proposal. And it's structured such that as the fixed fee decreases, the per citation charge increases. So let me run through some other matrix lines, and then I'll address the cost neutrality matter. The Maryland programs just indicates how many programs they have active in Maryland. The Montgomery County presence indicates if they have a specific Montgomery County presence. Uptime, service level is really basically it wasn't a variable we requested to be addressed in the proposals. However, some did, but the service level agreement uptime is basically how much the system is operational. It's not down due to technical problems or things like that. All of them have a very high percentage of uptime. And so that is really not something I think that we need to concern ourselves with. And then there's a termination for convenience clause. Some didn't specify it in their proposals. Some indicated that the terms would have to be determined and negotiated. Others, like Elevate, said there's a 60-day termination for convenience clause. And Genoptic and Vitronic, Genoptic is 90 days and Vitronic is 60 days. Effectively, what that means is that if for whatever reason we wish to terminate the contract, we can do so within that specified period of time. The details of what we need to pay to the vendor, whether costs incurred to date or other startup costs, will have to be negotiated as we proceed to that phase with the preferred vendor. Cost neutrality. Let me explain that and go up to that line item again, and I can also share my screen to let me just do this a second if you don't mind. I'll just share my screen and show you something while I describe to you what cost neutrality is and why it's being offered and why it's beneficial to the town. That Elevate offers such a provision in its proposal. Okay, so cost neutrality simply guarantees that town will never pay more in vendor fees than it collects in fine revenue from the speed camera program. So in other words, the program will never lose money. I'll outline how it works in a simplistic way. Each month, the town pays the lesser of the monthly vendor fee or the fines collected that month. And if fines collected are less than the fee, the shortfall rolls over to the next month. And then in the next month, the town pays the lesser of the monthly fee plus the rolled over balance or the fines collected. And this process continues throughout the contract term. And at the contract end, any remaining rollover balance is absorbed by the vendor and the town owes nothing. So looking at the example on your screen, assuming $6,100 a month per vendor for the vendor fee. In January, if we only collect 2,000 was collected, the town pays 2,000. And so there's a shortfall of 4,100 that rolls over. And in February, if we collect 3,000, the town owes 6,100 plus 4,100 rollover for a total of 10,200, but we only pay 3,000 and the rollover grows to 7,200. And then in March, for example, if we make $20,000 in a strong month, the town owes the 6,100 plus the 7,200 rollover for a total of 13,300, and we pay 13,300, clearing the rollover balance. And then continuing the example in April, if the revenue is $15,000 collected, there's no rollover. The town pays 6,100 and we retain 8,900. So the key protection is that at contract end, any remaining rollover balance is absorbed by the vendor, and the town is never required to pay it. This means even if the program underperforms for the entire contract term and never fully catches up, the town's maximum exposure is limited to the fines it actually collected. So the vendor takes the risk and not the town. There is specific contract language in Elevate's contract that provides for this. And it matters because speed camera revenues are unpredictable, and it depends on how many people speed and how many citations are paid versus contested. Behavior change over time, fewer violations as drivers learn of the presence of a speed camera, as well as camera downtime and weather and road closures and things like that. So a successful safety program actually reduces violations over time as drivers change behavior, and cost neutrality ensures the town isn't penalized financially for achieving its safety goals. So in the second chart, you'll see sort of what the differentiation is between having and not having cost neutrality. If the fines fall short of the fees for several months, like in January, if we collect 2,000, we pay 6,100 without cost neutrality, and we effectively are out of pocket 4,100. With cost neutrality, we pay the 2,000 and 4,100 rolls over. February is 3,000. Without cost neutrality, we'd still pay 6,100 and we would be out 3,100. But with cost neutrality, we only pay amount of fines collected and the rollover grows, and it continues to roll over. The rollover grows with cost neutrality in March. And at the contract end, if we in fact didn't have cost neutrality, we would be out of pocket 9,300. But with cost neutrality, the rollover is completely absorbed by the vendor. And so I hope that helps explain what cost neutrality means and how it's demonstrated here. And with that, I would recommend the council direct me to begin negotiating a contract with Elevate, which we hopefully could have in place within several weeks, I assume. But I'd be happy to field any questions the council might have.
Okay, thank you. Of course, this is not normal procedure, but it was a small meeting. Mary, did you have a quick question to ask?
Yes. Well, it's actually, I'm trying on the video. Hang on one second. I'm trying.
Yes, that'd be nice.
Uh,
See who.
my video is not working, so forgive me for not having video. I just wanted to say two things. One is how much the residents on Bradley really appreciate the speed camera. So that's number one. I personally have been terrified to walk a dog on Bradley Lane, so I really appreciate that. Then I just wanted to ask about the fact that the existing camera, the one that was there on loan, I don't know how it was there, appears to be gone. And I wanted to ask about that. And then I just also wanted to make one comment, which is that I think the flashing lights are really counterproductive because they give the message that if they aren't flashing, there's no reason to be slow. And that's it for my comments or my questions.
Okay, thank you. On the status of the camera on the south side, we know that the camera's only, Todd, why don't you speak to that? Because we know that
Sure.
the camera's only there intermittently.
Yeah, the county's going through a full replacement. They changed vendors at the end of last year from Elevate to Vitronic, and Elevate is taking all of its equipment out. Every single speed camera it had in the county, they're taking out all of that, and it's being replaced with Vitronic equipment. So we have every indication that's just going to be replaced in short order with a Vitronic camera. We have no indication they're removing it and going to not replace it. With respect to the flashing lights, we recently asked for them to be repaired because they were in a state of disrepair and for quite some time and obscured by vegetation. And I believe those, if I'm not mistaken, are simply and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those flashing lights, I didn't think they were triggered by any speed. I thought they were supposed to be flashing to remind residents, motorists of the speed limit. Is that not correct? Remind me. I can't remember.
They appear to flash at random times.
Oh,
It
we'll
doesn't
check on
it
that.
doesn't appear to be linked to the school. I think that something technologically with the programming on when they're supposed to flash is like totally AWOL at the moment or
Okay.
screwed up. So it appears to be random.
Okay, we'll check on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for this analysis. It's a great analysis. And, we on Bradley Lane are very thankful.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Mary. Comments from my colleagues or questions?
I have one question or maybe two, but I think it's not really with respect to the difference between the vendors. But I thought, and I should have thought of this earlier, but I wondered about, if the town is successful in collecting the $2,000. I mean, presumably we're still on the hook for whatever whatever for the amount of the tickets, and whether we're successful or not in collecting that money is on us. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I guess
Yeah, based on the contract, it's the amount collected, not the amount issued.
Okay.
The amount collected only.
All right. Any other comments? My two cents for it. First, I appreciate the care of the analysis. And in discussions I've had with Todd, I've been very focused on the contract neutrality because I was concerned about that. And as I said before, without it, we're in a paradoxical situation where you clearly want the camera to be successful in reducing speed, but if it was really successful, we'd end up having a substantial financial liability. So it's nice to not have to worry about that side of the equation. The cost neutrality really does mean that there's just no downside to us. And some of the other vendors in their pricing structure effectively get to cost neutrality, but there's still some smidgen of risk we would still be obtaining because the fixed payment would be due no matter what. So nobody has the cards there. But also, I think the fact that Chevy Chase Village uses them has been very satisfied with them. And as Todd pointed out, stuff is going to happen, things are going to have to be repaired. You want a vendor who knows the area, has to come from time to time to the village anyway, so can come see us. It's just a better situation. The county has gone to Vitronic, but as I understand it, they had a falling out with Elevate, but the issues they cited have not been cited at all by the village. The village has had no trouble with them. And Vitronic deal, as you can see, would leave us extremely exposed. There's no cost neutrality whatsoever. Furthermore, we have to assume that they will be very focused on serving Montgomery County as a whole. And I suspect we would be very much at the bottom of the last to receive a call back on any time we get in touch with them. So I think I'm perfectly comfortable with the recommendation that's been made. Todd, how long do you think it would take to get a contract?
I'd say within 3 weeks. I would hope we could do it within 3 weeks. We're going to use the Chevy Chase Village contract. Ron and I have been discussing how long it might take to put together one, but I think it would take about 3 weeks probably.
Okay.
We'd have to meet with their attorney and our attorney likely to work through some provisions and to make sure they're mutually beneficial. But
Sure.
I think we could do it within probably 3 weeks, max a month.
Okay. And then after that, how long will it take them to install the camera?
Contract signing to operation of the camera, about 4 months. I'd say
Okay.
4 months. I'd say we're looking at something, and we'll have to determine whether or not we I'll have to confer with Ron as to whether or not I don't know if the system has to issue warnings for the first 30 days. I believe, Ron, there's some requirement that there might be some a warning period where the camera only issues warnings. But nonetheless, operational with respect to either warnings or citations within about 4 months of contract signing.
Okay. We should point out one of the steps that Elevate will have to undertake is getting approval from SHA, which is not going to be in their control.
That might take a while. Yeah. That might extend the timeline a bit,
Right.
depending upon how responsive SHA is. But we're hoping they know our interest in it, and they know we've been asking for it and have been interested in it for some time. So I'm hoping that process won't be too lengthy, but we're hoping at least late summer, early fall.
Right. But we'll keep pushing. That's for sure. Okay. Do we need a motion to approve you're negotiating with Elevate?
Ron, do you think they need a motion to do that? I don't think so.
It's not necessary. They can just agree by consensus to give us that
Well, let's say that.
instruction.
Agreed by consensus then that you should proceed and negotiate with Elevate. Good.
All right.
Thank you very much. This
Thank
is
you.
progress. This is good. This is good. All right. The second is discussion of Zimmerman. Todd, Dave, who would like to lead us and just walk through what's going to happen here?
Dave, can you give it a second? There you go.
Sure. So notices were sent out probably a month ago to residents in the vicinity of Zimmerman Park about an upcoming water main abandonment project that WCC is planning to undertake. It's work that's proposed to begin in the summer. It'll take about 2 months, and what it is essentially doing is right now there are 2 water mains that run from Maple Avenue up to East West Highway through the park. We brought this to WCC's attention 5 or 6 years ago as we were planning for the development of the new park that's been built down there, and asked if they could be replaced before we began that construction. They didn't agree to it, and then once we started the construction, they came to us and said, "Hey, we want to abandon these pipes." Since we were already under construction, we decided we needed to proceed with the work. So essentially what they're doing is rerouting a water main on East West Highway. That will then allow for the removal of, or the abandonment of the 2x2 run through the park. And in order to do that, they'll need to dig 2 holes along Maple Avenue, in order to disconnect the existing water mains from a water main that runs on Maple Avenue. So the actual work or the impact to the new park is actually pretty minimal. So we'll just need to do some restoration work along Maple Avenue. And then there's some work along East West Highway and in East West Highway, which is a state right of way, that we don't really control. So that is sort of the extent of it. The pipes that run through the park are going to be abandoned in place. They'll typically be filled with low density concrete to keep them from collapsing and make sure that water doesn't enter them and cause any erosion. So that's what we do.
Okay. Any comments or questions? No. I think the bottom line for us is that this actually will be very minimal disruption of all the work we've just completed doing. When we saw the notices from the rest, the first thought was, oh my God. But I take it that this really will not be very significant in terms of having to redo very much.
Yeah, the work on Maple should be done very quickly. The restoration work is certainly manageable. We're have to get slight repair that's needed to the flagstone area right behind the pedestrian ramp. But other than that, it's just going to be a matter of managing the contractor, overseeing the work and the restoration and making sure tree protection measures are followed and the work is done quickly and efficiently.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Sure.
The park itself will be accessible to people during the 2 months.
So certainly from the Dennison Garden, people could certainly walk along the pathway starting at Lynn. People will certainly be able to walk across the curb and around the fence. So, other than the 2 holes, and unfortunately one of them is at that crosswalk at Blackthorn, which will be blocked during the work. But the park will be accessible and there shouldn't be any reason why people couldn't use it.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Now I'd like to go to the first topic that I added to discuss Governor Moore's housing proposals. There are 3 bills which the governor has submitted to the legislature to consider. One is called the Starter and Silver Opportunity Housing Act, I think is the name of it, which basically will does several things that are fairly drastic. Statewide, not specific to any location, but statewide, it would reset the setbacks for single-family residential housing from the current, where we currently are, either for the town or the county, to only 10 feet in the front. I think it's only 10 feet in the back and 5 feet each side. So it would permit a
Or
very
townhouses, Mr. Mayor.
footprint for any housing that would go up. It would also permit homeowners to subdivide their property by right to create up to 3 townhomes on their site. I'm looking at Ron while I say this to make sure I'm not making a mistake in this. And that obviously would be a drastic change. It also permits that if there's lots that are much larger than 5,000 square feet, they could be subdivided into 5,000 square foot lots. It also does not permit municipalities to set either minimum or maximum sizes for the structures that go up. So it really does open up tremendous change in the approach that's been taken in terms of zoning. The other 2 acts, that's the only one that we were able to see language on so far. There are 2 other acts, one of which is probably not very material to us, which has to do with basically grandfathering a developer who starts a job and not having things change on him during construction, which seems on the face of it fair. The third is called the is dealing with transportation-oriented development, otherwise known as TOD, into these acronyms. And that seems to be focused on trying to push forward with more development of state-owned land in areas around metropolitan transit areas. But we also want to check the language carefully to see what it covers respecting parking lots. And we obviously do not want anything which would jeopardize the redevelopment of the farm women's market into parks. So that language, when that becomes available to us, is something we will certainly be very focused on. I have a few other comments to make, but Ron, let me turn it over to you for a moment to see if there's anything else you want to add at this time, and anything else you may have heard about the color behind this proposed legislation and what traction it might have.
Yeah, so I can add that, as the mayor noted, there are 3 bills. Just one has been dropped in the hopper so far. We're monitoring, and when the other 2 are dropped, we'll let you know. And the governor's messaging to date has been that with all 3 of these bills, they're aimed at removing so-called barriers to multifamily development, especially townhouse development. And so the Starter and Silver Homes Act identifies what are considered barriers for townhouse development, and that is, all the regulations that the mayor just noted, especially setbacks and lot coverage. And as the mayor noted, they are quite drastic because, as everybody knows, right now the minimum front setback, for example, is 25 feet or the established building line, whichever is greater. And as currently written, this bill would reduce that front setback to 10 feet, and it would prohibit local regulations that impose lot coverage, design element restrictions, and other such things. That said, this is just how it's currently drafted in its initial form. I do expect, if it were to pass, it would go through amendments. As you'll probably recall, in 2024, the governor's Housing Expansion and Affordability Act passed with amendments. That act prohibited at the local level any regulations that were, quote, unreasonable, end quote, meaning they would have a impact on the viability of a project. But there was, a lot of angst and comments on that legislation, and as a result, there was a single family neighborhood exemption written in to remove the law's application for single family neighborhoods that existed as of January 1, 2025. So it's quite possibly with this legislation as well, a similar exemption could be carved out. And that said, there's obviously a intent to address affordable housing at the state level and national level, frankly. So this is something we need to be on top of and probably get together with neighboring jurisdictions and talk about what sort of comments we want to submit.
Yeah, let me just add a couple of comments and turn it over for further discussion. I think the last point is key, that anything that we do, we have to be obviously working with our neighboring communities to try to have a consensus and common approach, and also keep in close touch with our legislators. I have reached out to Senator Waldstreicher's office, to him, and I haven't spoken to him yet, but his chief of staff got back to me and said that they had just become aware of the bill and hadn't had a chance to study it yet. And I also just, before the council meeting, had a chance to talk to Delegate Solomon, and he had quickly looked at it but hadn't had a chance to study it yet. I think, and I've also talked to a council member, Friedson, who also was aware of it, but it certainly is very early days for the county to come to grips with what they want for here. I think the overall sense is that, at least I would infer from these conversations, that this is not something which had been carefully and thoroughly worked at the grass level and through previous meetings with legislators. It was pretty much just sort of dropped. So there just hasn't been a chance yet for the legislators to really come to grips with it and in turn come back to their constituents and try to decide what they may wish to do. I think we might assume that the Maryland County Association, Maryland Association of Counties, MACO, would be opposed to this because it takes away so much of the zoning authority that all the counties currently have. That being said, one observation that was made to me is that there could be people in Montgomery County who feel so strongly in favor of higher density near in our county that they'd be willing to see some of the power of authority for zoning given up if in exchange what they get is the opening up of more development that the county itself might not otherwise provide. So we can't assume that the reduction of authority would in itself cause a massive degree of opposition. Some might just decide that's a price worth paying. In any event, right now, I don't think we really know very much about it. I feel like we ought to make sure that we try to learn what might be the progress of it through the chambers, and what amendments and changes might be discussed. Otherwise, we could just be, getting all torqued up without knowing what direction we should be torqued to. So I think we need to try to learn more first. But that being said, we certainly have to take it seriously. And I'm pleased that the Land Use Committee considered this on Monday night, and the Long Range Planning Committee will take it up on Thursday. I don't have much else to say at the current time, but I just want to make sure we had some discussion about it. So please, any comments or thoughts about it? Be happy to take one.
Ron, you both highlighted the importance of getting the other communities involved in this. And during the last go around with the state bill that did pass, we had that consortium. We also had Ron and another attorney on board to help guide us through. So Ron, are you suggesting we start something like that again?
Yeah, I think at a minimum, we should probably schedule a conference call or joint meeting with the down county municipalities and start talking about what comments we might want to jointly submit, and reach out to the county as well, because this tends to undermine the recently adopted Workforce Housing Act, because as you'll recall, Councilmember Friedson's initiative creates the ability to construct multifamily housing in single-family zones so long as there's a workforce housing component, an affordable housing component. But as currently drafted, this state legislation would not require any special affordability review or other optional method development review. So that recently adopted county law would be rendered a nullity. So I'm sure the county is going to have some comments as well. And just quickly, notably, this law applies to single family homes, which is defined as single family homes plus townhouses, but doesn't address duplexes, triplexes, or quadplexes, which the county has in mind with its legislation. So it will be important to meld the law with contemporary practices. As the mayor said, this does look like a pretty rough draft with a lot to be worked out.
There'll be it's not like there aren't other things for the assembly to be doing. There's a lot of focus on the redistricting of the congressional delegation, and also obviously very serious budget work. And as you probably know, there's a date which I think, Ron, will be in mid-March thereabouts, where legislation has to be crossed over. So effectively, whatever is going to be done really has to be done over the next 8 weeks, and which obviously is not a lot of time. So I think there is a question as to how much time people could really focus on something this radical. And by the way, in an election year,
Yeah.
where the primary is in June, and a lot of districts that effectively is the general election. So there's a lot of pressure in them.
So it sounds like then, I mean, until we know that it's actually gonna be a viable bill, which is March, we probably don't, we just need to kind of keep on top of it.
Well, I think if the legislation gains traction and they're starting thinking hard even with amendments, that'll happen long before March. That'll be happening starting early in February, probably, or, within a few weeks off hearings. I think Ron's point about having some conference calls with our fellow Chevy Chases and John County communities is a good idea. And we should probably try to organize one as early as next week, and just to get people on the same page and thinking about it.
And what about coordination with the other, is it counties? Did you say Mako?
Yes, that's their job. So they will be doing that. Yeah. Okay, never a dull moment. Then the last item for discussion I wanted to cover, going from the general to the very specific, is the issue of snow removal. This exchange we had with this resident this past week brought to mind something which is a chronic problem. I think what we always know happens with snowstorms is that if the town doesn't take care of the sidewalks, and even when the town does take care of the sidewalks, there are many homes that have not done what they could do to clean off their sidewalks first. And that leads to two situations. If the town is not subsequently cleaning the sidewalk, then there can be very icy conditions in front of those homes. Even if the town does actually undertake a program, as we've had to explain to a lot of residents, it's not possible to start the work till after the snowstorm is completely stopped. It then takes at least 24 hours and sometimes longer. We have 20 miles of sidewalks in the town, and there's only one contractor who will provide crews to do this. So what often happens is that if the sidewalks have not been cleared, then even when the contractors finally get to it, all they can do is put down rock salt, and the ice is still there to a very substantial degree. There really isn't any substitute for the homeowners themselves very promptly taking care of their own sidewalks so that it's not trampled into ice. It's really what is required. So there's no easy solution, but I think what I did want to at least explore, and Todd, I'd ask you to sort of offer some preliminary thoughts of pros and cons, is what can we do to try to put more pressure, frankly, on residents who have not stepped up with their responsibility to clean their sidewalks, particularly when the town is not engaging with contractors. And right now, there's not much other than the notices in the town prior, sort of admonishing people to please clean up your sidewalks. We don't really have any other enforcement mechanisms.
We don't. Our code requires residents to clear precipitation from sidewalks if the town doesn't act, and it doesn't trigger its sidewalk snow removal program. If we don't activate that, then the requirement is for residents to clear their sidewalks within 24 hours after precipitation has stopped. All we've been doing up to this point is what you've noted, Barney, which is we've been ensuring that residents are fully aware of what the town's decision is, whether it's activating the program or not. And if it does not activate the program, we remind them of their responsibilities and the time frame in which that the clearing of sidewalks has to be undertaken. But because we only have really one vendor who can provide the resources to put to the task once we activate the program, obviously we're beholden to them, and they have other clients as well. And sometimes they can't, activate sidewalk snow removal in the town until usually the day after, normally. It depends upon when the precipitation stops. They don't work during the night due to disturbances to residents and just general safety of their crews. So it takes a little time for them to activate the program, number one. But if we don't activate the program, residents have 24 hours in which to clear their sidewalks. I don't know of any great solution here. The only problem with assembling complaints and acting on only complaints is complaints can come in on a rolling basis, and effectively we'd have to wait 24 hours after precipitation to stop to start assembling and legitimate complaints, and then feeding them to our contractor, who then, and if we get them on a rolling basis, the contractors, there's a significant cost for deployment. And so I just don't see that they're going to have the resources available to us on a daily basis for a week or more to come in and address individual complaints of residents about slippery sidewalks in certain locations in town. So I don't know if there's a great solution here other than well, I mean, there are decisions can be made on the polar ends of this. Discontinue the program and put it all on the residents to clear. But it's not a great solution. We do it when residents need it most. And we provide timely alerts to them as to when we're not activating the program and when it's their responsibility. But I don't know anyway. I doubt we want to get into a position of hiring a contractor and then charging the cost back to the homeowner. It's just not workable, and it's logistically very complicated to do that. But unfortunately, I can't think of any better solution than what we're doing now.
Any comments or ideas from my colleagues?
Yeah, I have a comment, which is, it's a problem, no question about it. Everybody that walks in the neighborhood after a snowstorm, 90% of the people do clear, probably 10% don't. There's ice patches and it's very dangerous. I think in addition to just saying to people, oh, it's your responsibility, I think we need to remind them that not only is it their responsibility, they're also liable after that point. You know, if we notify them that that it's their responsibility, then if somebody slips and falls, it's not on us, it's on them. And so I think we need to make it clear, add that into our message to people that says, hey, it's your responsibility and it's not the town's liability, it's your personal liability if someone is injured. So other than doing that, I don't think there's a way to efficiently mount a program to go after a snowstorm or go after a person who isn't compliant. It just it's almost logistically impossible for us to do that.
Something that I've actually seen be effective in other communities when I was looking at aging in place and the mechanisms, the social norms that are conducive to aging, is using the listserv to basically inquire very earnestly, does anyone know if neighbor at XX Street 305 is at home? Or if they're traveling? If not, maybe we can get some town or somebody to basically alert on a social platform or some public facing platform that this house has not plowed or shoveled their driveway or whatever. It's an inquiry, it's assuming good intent, but it also, if that homeowner is checking that listserv or whatever, knows or is made aware, or their neighbors would make them aware if they are indeed out of town. That's just something that I've seen happen and is actually effective.
So yeah, we
Pressure, but assuming well intentioned.
That's not sort of
yeah, sorry.
let me see if Tambra or Carl have any comments.
I only would agree that it's a problem, and I think it's more, I think there are more icy patches than 10%. Just when I've been out walking the dog, and it does worry me, because people could fall. And I wonder if there's something short of issuing, you know, a bill for doing it for them. A warning, some kind of warning system, or like a personal, letter directed to them. I don't know, a warning that's alerts them that there's a problem and someone's noticed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've, PSC's thought about this in history and there's really, by the time you do that, by the time somebody notifies the town,
Mhm.
by the time somebody from the town goes to deliver the thing, you're at least a day and a half after the event. In most instances, our weather patterns are such that it starts to solve itself in a couple of days. So you're mobilizing a huge staff effort that essentially has very little payback. It is a tough problem. I don't know whether it's 10% or 20%, it's a problem. But short of, it just becomes logistically, I think it's logistically impossible for the staff to do stuff like that in those events. One of the things that I think that could be done is that we could, not us as town officials, the staff, PSC committee members themselves, what we could do is essentially print up little cards, the town logo on it. And if we see a sidewalk that hasn't been plowed, just put it into their door. Because I think we all walk, all of us here walk, and the town staff's out all the time. So, and that may be that you may be able to do it close enough to the event that it would make an effect, and people may pay attention to it, especially if it's on a little town note card says you haven't cleared your sidewalks. You're supposed to under the town ordinance. It's your liability. Please clear your walk. And just, as we're out walking around and we see it.
You remind me of the signs that people put. You're talking about inducing social norms, so it's like the signs people put in their yards of please clean up after your dog.
Yeah. Oh. So just a thought. I mean,
I like that idea.
But I mean, I don't want to give everybody the ability to do that. But certainly the town officials and members of the Public Service Committee ought to be able to get a little stack of cards, and if they're out, and I think we may get some results from that. I don't know.
Another idea, I was just trying to think of, somehow, having streets compete against each other for the clearest walk. And what's the town needs? Maybe the town needs get the prize,
Yeah.
We could also encourage residents in our messaging. In our messaging, we do, as we always do every year in December, about winter storm preparations. Encourage residents to retain a vendor or a contractor to remove snow and ice. Because if you think about it, every resident has to clear their own private walkways and driveways, right? So adding a piece of sidewalk in front of their home is not a huge ask. I just think people either don't know about it, they're out of town, or they're waiting for the town to do it in every instance. But I think maybe adding some information to the messaging we do at the beginning of winter of ensuring that people recognize their need to retain a contractor, and the same contractor, it could be the same contractor they use for private property snow removal is what we would recommend that they do. So if they're out of town, it's an automatic removal process by their contractor, because ostensibly they're hiring, or perhaps they're not, maybe they're doing it themselves, but either if they do it themselves or their contractor does it, they could also do the sidewalk in front of their homes.
Yeah, I was gonna make comments similar to that where whether it's on the listserv or a resource page where there's a list of vendors who are willing to do this, some way to sort of, make it easier for folks who don't shovel their own walkways to get services. And I also wondered if, we put out the signs for parking adjustments in the event of snow emergencies. I mean, there's a lot of them still around, and maybe part of that signage could include a reminder for folks that, they have to shovel their own walkways. And maybe even things like having, small bags of ice melt or, shovels to give away here at Town Hall. Little things that would encourage people to, know it's their responsibility and, support them in trying to get that done. But it's-
Yes. So we, on our website, we have advertised, we have a town teens list, and we also have contacted quite a number of vendors of landscaping companies who do snow removal in the winter. Unfortunately, every single landscaping company we contacted, as you can imagine, it's not surprising that they need a prior, that those with a contract get priority service, right? Like, for example, there's one that says priority service with contract, or another one that says you have to have a seasonal contract before they will do it, because they're overwhelmed when in snowfalls and winter storms, and they have contracts with those who have, who get priority service. And so it's almost impossible to call a landscaping company after a winter storm and get anybody to respond. And so that really hasn't worked very well, because not surprisingly, they're going to give priority service to those who have contracts. And Carlos, your second point was
signage we already have signage that goes out, about parking and during snow emergencies, and just, as part of that signage, it could be more visual signage for people who do walk every day, and, are reminded if there's snow that they have to take care of it. It's,
right.
some of the things that, I think if part of the problem is people don't realize it, or they're waiting for the town to do it.
Right. Yeah, another part of the problem would be
reminders on signage might help them be reminded that it's their responsibility.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the signage would have to be pretty clear as to when it's their responsibility. And that's why there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, or an expectation that's among some residents that the town will do it always. And they wait and wait to see if the town, even though we've announced that we're not doing it, and we make those decisions pretty quickly. I guess, any signage that says it's your responsibility could be done, although it wouldn't be theirs if we decided to activate the program. So that's where it gets into this sort of gray area. But nonetheless, you're.
But even if we actually, I remember we talked about this, I think at PSC some time ago. It's advantageous for the town to the extent people clear their sidewalks, whether the town would have cleared them or not, right? I mean, we're waiting for 6 inches of snow. In the meantime,
You're absolutely right.
if a resident wants to take care of it,
Right.
it just makes the rest of the town get cleared more quickly. So
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. We have included
set
that.
the expectation that people expected to clear their
Yeah, we
walkway.
haven't.
I think that's right. We have done that in the past.
We
We've
have.
said to people that even if the town does it, please help us and do it yourself if you can, because
Yeah.
it'll be more thorough. You'll get to it faster, cleaner, and
We have.
Okay, well, I'm not hearing any brand new ideas. I think the only thing that would really be enforcement would in fact be pretty draconian, which would be to say, okay, we will come and clear your sidewalk, and we'll give you a citation for the $50 or whatever we think it costs to have a crew come do that. But that's probably not going to be very popular, but also difficult to administer. I mean, even if it's 100 to 200 homes, that's a lot of homes to monitor, to know that they're in violation, and you don't want neighbors on turning in neighbors, so it gets to be very awkward very quickly.
Barney, on that, I think that's well intentioned in a way, but it can also backfire a little bit, because people can say, well, in terms of liability,
Yes.
it sort of sets an expectation. If I don't get to it, all I have to do is pay the town $50
And
we'll
then
be there.
effectively, that's what I'll pay, so I'll let them do it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I think your point about liability is one we could stress.
Nobody likes the idea of us handing out little cards.
I like it.
I do too.
I have to walk the dog anyway.
Yeah, we're walking our
I
animals.
mean, these things, like empirically, it's been published in journals, it's the social norm. So if the neighborhood and the town, no one wants to be that one jerk on the block that didn't plow their sidewalk.
As an aside, I mean, I used to carry little 3x5 cards with me when I walk my dog, because I was tired of people blocking the sidewalks, right? So I put a little card, just a little card, and please do not block the sidewalk, and stick it on their windshield, right? I don't know whether it helped or hurt, but
It made you feel better.
It made me feel better. And I think a lot of times people, when they saw it, it did make a difference. And I think that the point is that if we make it apparent to people that we think they're, it's a civic responsibility for you to do this. And as we see it, just point it out to them. We're not penalizing them. We're not doing anything else.
Okay, well, let me let me jot down some notes. I want to talk about it with Todd and come back with some ideas and things we might be able to do. I think we agree it's difficult, but we'd like to see if there's something more we can do to use it.
Can I
Sure.
also that Todd mentioned the difficulty with the vendors. It seems as if there, might be people who would be interested in, earning, money shoveling sidewalks, but how to, get the, homeowner in touch with those people.
Well, that's what Todd, why don't you talk about that again? The town teens program that does try to do that matching.
I would be a special, like a snow shoveler list rather than, because the town teens is babysitting.
I see.
All that other stuff. There was
The town teens list also lists snow shoveling as a service provided by the town teens. But they could be otherwise indisposed, school, out of town, they're not guaranteed.
How many names are on that list, Todd?
No, my guess is like 15 right now. It's hard to keep up to date. It's very hard to keep up to date. Kids move out, they go to college, this list gets stale. We can ask for, we've advertised in the town crier before in the forecast for these updates to be provided, and we usually do it before every snow removal season, but there are fewer and fewer who are adding their names to the list. And so it can get stale pretty quickly. But all the contractors, beyond town teens, all the contractors are fully booked up when it snows with those who have signed contracts with them prior to the winter season. But the teens list becomes pretty stale pretty quickly, and there are not that many people on there. And those who are on there, one or two or three perhaps say snow shoveling, but so it's not a great resource for that purpose.
Okay.
I agree with that, as two of those names belong to my household and they're in college.
And they're in college. And they're in college, right? Exactly.
All right, well, let me write up something and see if we can come up with some moral suasion ideas that can help out. All right. That's it for the council discussions. Then just for some updates. The first one here is the prospect of the town working with some other municipalities. So we've lost Ron, right? Ron Boltus signed off.
He signed off,
I
Barney.
did notice, by the way, he identified himself as the village attorney.
I know.
Todd, you'll have to chastise him.
I
He
will.
shouldn't be advertising whom else he's working for.
Exactly.
He can change it to town attorney in the future.
I noticed. Well.
But I have been in discussion with Lou Morseberger, who's one of the members of the board of Chevy Chase Village. The idea would be that several of the Chevy Chases could come together to sponsor election forums this spring for a county executive, for the District 1 County Council, and also seat, and also the at-large. I think, this is very critical time for the county. I think there's a lot of interest in these elections. And I think it'd be great to have candidate forums that we can attract a decent sized audience to and cooperate with our surrounding neighborhoods, communities to do it. This was considered by Chevy Chase Village at their meeting 2 nights ago, and they reported back that they're in favor of it. They do believe it's important to invite not just the Democrats, but also the Republicans, of course. But also, Lou made, I think, a good point, which is that we ought to set some standard in terms of level of donations or something so that we're getting the main candidates of both parties, not just, having to feel we have to invite absolutely everybody. Just because you want the airtime to be given to the people who are the most likely ones who people would be interested in hearing. So that's the general idea. I think we'd like to reach out to Section 3, Martin's Addition, Section 5, Somerset, and we could also include, if we wish, some of the communities that are unincorporated, such as especially East Bethesda, who we have a good rapport with. But try to build up a nexus of enough population that we think we could get a good crowd. I think what would be, if this is a consensus, we'd like to do this. I'm seeing nods of the head, so I assume the answer is yes. We need to have a inter-municipal committee or neighborhood committee. And I'd like to know if any of you would be willing to serve and help in organizing this. If not, I guess it will fall to me, but I'm very much like not to do this, so I'd like somebody else to volunteer.
Is it also possible that we could engage someone from our elections board? That might that be, I know that typically they're focused on just the town council on elections, but maybe the support.
We could certainly ask for help. But I think for organizing this with the other municipalities, it would be good to have someone from the town council engaged, because it's probably the level which we'll be discussing it with the other.
I hate to say, I'm gonna be gone for about 2 months.
2 months? Wow.
No, not totally.
Okay, so you're out.
I'm willing.
Okay, Carl, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch, and no, it shouldn't be that much work. It's mostly just getting it corralled. And I think, frankly, picking dates and I think the venue that at least comes to my mind as most logical is the social hall here. That's pretty large, and obviously it's convenient for us, but it's relatively convenient for all the Chevy Chases. And if we needed a larger space, we'd probably have to go to BCC. But then that's huge, and I don't think it's likely to have to be that big.
It's pretty big space.
Yeah, I think the social hall would probably work.
Does the village have big space?
Their town hall is not nearly as big as the social. It's bigger than, as I recollect, I've only seen it once. I think it's bigger than this space, but not the size of the social. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Then, Rich, do you want to say a few words about Rosemary? I just want to ask Rich to give a quick update on the discussions regarding Rosemary and the work of the PSC currently in looking at how to alleviate the traffic problems there.
Well, they are working on it. We've done a lot of discussion with the staff and with Jill Coutreau, got a lot of suggestions and alternatives. We're also meeting with the school, I think this Friday, right? This Friday. And their transportation people, the school staff and the school's transportation arm, to see what any thoughts they may have. And we're scheduling for the next PSC meeting, which is in February, to have another resident engagement session. So we'll have staff input, we'll have some recommendations from the schools, and we'll have an opportunity for residents to also weigh in on that at the February PSC meeting. So I would hope we have something to bring back early spring to the council.
Well, hopefully, because if it's later in the spring, we won't be here. I mean, this council will go out of session at the end of April.
Right,
So.
right.
Okay, good. We know it's a big issue and look forward to some good ideas on how that can be resolved or improved. Then this afternoon, Rich and I and Todd and Grant was here and Edmund Frawley had a Zoom meeting with the SHA. Do you want to summarize that?
Well, yeah, if we want, we can do it. They had prepared a draft list of recommendations, and so we thought we were going to get a final report from them. It appears that we're not going to get a final report, but they have come back with some suggested options that they think they could do fairly quickly. What they were suggesting is, well, let me tell you what they won't do. One of the things that we would have liked to have seen was putting some speed tables along Bradley Avenue. And I don't know whether you know the difference between a hump and a table. The humps are fairly like that. A speed table is a much flatter surface, and then it has a bump at the end. They also don't go clear across the road so that emergency vehicles can pass by them fairly easily. There's a pilot that the state, there's a number of pilots, but there's a couple of pilots in Montgomery County that they're looking at the effectiveness of those speed tables. And they have to do that because the speed tables are not on the list of approved speed mitigation measures in the state. So before they can put that on that list, they do a pilot, they gather some data, they make an analysis, and then they make a recommendation to the state highway administration about whether or not these speed tables could be a permanent fixture on some of our roads. That's going to take forever. The pilots end this summer, I think it is, May, beginning of the summer, for them to do the analysis and then go through the process of getting state approval. It's going to be a year or a year and a half before they even think about that. So there were a couple of much closer term, near-term activities that they've suggested. And one is to, along all of the state roadways, you have those white stripes along the edges of the road. On Bradley Lane, they're currently a 4-inch stripe, and the residents feel that they need a wider stripe so that more people are aware that it's not to go over it. And so in order for them to do the wider stripe, they were going to move the center, actually move the double lines, no passing lines. They were going to move the one that's closest to, not on the curb, the stripe there, they're going to move it over 4 inches and then leave a 10-inch space in between the two stripes, because they felt that the visual appearance of that kind of double line, they believe causes people to actually slow down. I don't know why, but they say the behavior supports that. Behavior after they've done it supports that. So we've had a discussion with the residents, Ed and Grant, thank you. And Grant suggested, well, we really, we're not too concerned about, we're much more concerned about the visibility of keeping people off the sidewalk. So we're much more in favor of having a wider stripe. And if we can do a wider stripe, we don't see the need to do the widening of the double lines. So the State Highway Administration folks are going to give us a drawing that shows those widened white stripes versus their recommendation. They're going to send us the pack that the PowerPoint
We'll distribute that, yeah.
they did, so that we can discuss it with the residents. I think after we certainly want to make sure that, it is the safety of the pedestrians along that sidewalk that we're concerned about. So that we're gonna go back to the residents and talk to them about that. The other big thing is at least I think, from our standpoint, the speed camera is a very important aspect of this. And with the more visible striping on the road and a speed camera, we hope that somewhat mitigates the problem. Because that's the only near-term solution we have. There are other longer-term solutions which are not as easily achieved. And so we haven't pursued those yet. So things like widening the sidewalk, which requires to take some of resident property, or at least some of using our right of way. In some places, our right of way is actually built on by structures of the private residences. So, and we don't want to, we're not there yet, in that sense. So we're going to see what they come back with us on the striping stuff and take it to the residents and see what they would prefer, and then move quickly to get the speed camp in place.
That's basically right. I think one thing that was encouraging was they basically were turning it over to the town as to what option would we like,
Yeah.
rather than dictating something very precisely. So when we said we actually care more about widening the stripe on the side than about the traffic calming impact of widening the two yellow lines in the middle, widening the gap between those two yellow lines, they said, fine. No,
Yeah.
they were completely
Fine.
okay with that. So I think they will certainly, and I suspect the residents will concur if they want the widest stripe possible on the side. But I trust that we'll get the package very quickly, send it to the residents, and we should probably try to get back to the SHA with a decision, within a month,
Yeah,
within a few
easily.
weeks even. And I presume the council would be fine with widening the stripe. That's what we do. We don't have to have another council meeting to discuss that. But we really want to get on it. I think if we do agree with it, there's still an issue about the temperatures have to be moderate in order for the painting. So it might still be something that can't happen until early spring. The other thing they put up and we'll be putting up more, are additional signs prohibiting trucks of 5 tons or more going on to Bradley. How effective that'll be, but at least they are committed to more signs and also to removing the vegetation which hides a couple of the current signs. So some progress. Unfortunately, the speed cushions, I think that's the term I've always used, but you're talking about speed table, same thing. That I think is less likely. So we will be relying really on the camera. That'll be very important. So what we would hope is that sometime by late summer, we would have the striping in place, the camera in place, and then we could take a new baseline and see how much all that has helped and see what else might have to be done. Then lastly, just very quickly, I was able to speak to representative of the Bernstein Management Corporation this afternoon about the farmhouse market. They have now engaged a consultant to work with them on optimizing and planning the space. That's going to be what the first quarter's work is going to be. So as a practical matter, kicking off renewed work on a site plan is probably something that will be April or probably May, but won't be in the first quarter. But they are actively thinking through what they want to do with all that. And I can understand they have to get some consultancy and think about it. So anyway, not much more to report, but still they want to push it. So it's good. Anything else that we need to cover tonight? Todd, is there anything else?
Nothing
You've
else.
managed to stay here the entire time. Thank you.
You did say Corso said that, what is the status of our garage?
So they've put up a temporary shelter, if you will, to house the truck with the snowplow for this winter, and they are going to install a more permanent garage, likely in March once financing is is received. And the project will, and once the project of the groundbreaking, if you will, begins, they're going to put a more permanent structure up with a dedicated power supply and restroom facilities and things like that. So for now, we're fine with the temporary facility they've put up. So it keeps the truck out of the snow and inclement weather. But very soon, probably in March, we'll see more temporary, more permanent, excuse me, facilities there for our garage.
Thank you.
They're waiting till financing secured.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.